from Fiji Television. Now, of course, when we read up on the crisis, we won't actually see some global recovery in terms of economies getting back on track and people traveling till about 2023 to 2024. And obviously, I'm sure that you're aware of that. Fiji Airways obviously continuously look to government to bail you out when the need arises.
Well, the first response is that 2023, 2020, whatever is speculation. And I mean, when we prepared all our cash flows, we had to take some guesses of when we think this could happen. We spoke to all the other airlines, BNP Paribas, who have assisted us to validate all our cash flows. We've done different models. Some had said we assume that flying could happen by March next year, others by June next year, and we've done all these models and we structured a cash around them. So obviously, if we knew the answer, I could answer you. I don't know. We don't know when markets will open. We've done cash flows, we've done base case cash flows, and we've worked all our funding on that basis. And obviously, if things take much longer, we would have to look at what measures we need to take.
I was going to say, Sherian, that you obviously know something that we don't know. You're saying they will open by 22, 23. That's not necessarily correct. You're just taking a guess.
Yeah.
So you can't make those kind of assumptions based on guesswork. Even the health officials can't tell you. There's obviously talk about a vaccine. What if you have a vaccine that works in 6 months' time? It will completely change the ball game. So I don't think you can make those kind of assumptions. The reality of the matter is, as the CEO has highlighted, they've worked on various scenarios. We believe that the current guarantees we've given will actually hold Fiji in good stead. There are various, initiatives that are being undertaken. A lot of these issues pertaining to the opening of borders is not driven by airlines; it's driven by national governments and driven by health measures that are put in place, health security. So, as you know, that we have been in discussions with our two neighbors. Some exploratory discussions are taking place. And those need to be all worked out and worked through. So, in the same way, for example, you've seen that we've had the blue lanes open up. We've already got about 30 yachts. 2 months ago, nobody thought that we'd have 30 yachts coming to Fiji. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the RFMF and the various health personnel that are actually managing this for us and managing it really well. We have not had any breaches of our quarantine facilities, and we expect that to continue in that fashion. So in the same way, if the bulla bubble opportunity arises, it actually becomes practical and practically implemented, and is already highlighted about the VIP lanes, then that could have, bring things sooner rather than later.
So Rebecca,
can I just add a piece? AG, you mentioned about ADB Bank. So in their due diligences, and I must tell you, ADB have done a huge level of due diligence. They look at these questions and they're saying, here are the cash flows, you've got worst cases, best cases, and in that they built in how we handle contingencies. So the comfort I want to give you is that we're not naive, nor are the lenders. They brought in specialists like BNP Paribas to do a lot of extra due diligence. We've run many scenarios, and all of them are guesses. And yes, we have a whole range, and we have contingency plans, and the comfort is that we're not behind the curve, we're ahead of the curve on this in terms of managing it.
So Rebecca from the Fiji Times, you talked about firstly, thank you for explaining the differences between your lease and your purchase agreements. You talked about Wangavuka Holdings and how it's a special purpose company for your repayments for your purchase agreement. Is it also a special purpose company for your lease repayments?
No.
No, it's
So
not. Just
when you talk a lease, an operating lease is a rental. The aircraft owner owns it and rents you the plane. There's no ECA giving any form of guarantee or anything. So the leasing company, I use an example, DAE, goes and gets its own finance, buys the aircraft and rents it to us. We pay them the rental directly. They're not asking for anyone to secure anything or provide guarantees. With a purchase, when you do the 80% loan, Those are banks, they're not leasing companies. The bank says, here's a loan, but because they're scared of loans, these banks ask for some form of insurance. And the insurance is offered by export guarantee companies like the ECAs in Europe and Exim in the US. These are the guys that ask for a form of security to be a mortgage over the aircraft. And the only way you can do that, you can't do it within Fiji Airways, you have to create a special purpose company, move ownership there temporarily, and they pass the mortgage over. And so because of that, we have to make the payment to Wankavuka that pays then to the bank. With a rental, we pay straight to the owner, which is DAE or Avalon, and we have a few of these leasing companies. The word leasing, we should really call them rental companies. They buy it and they rent it. And the rental company, we pay the rental straight to the rental company. There's no ECA or export guarantee in it. It's just straight. Whereas with a loan, the banks that lend you the money are saying, well, Fiji Airways, you sitting with the aircraft in Fiji. What's our security? It's the aircraft. And we are just a financier. We want to be guaranteed, and they then ask the export credit agencies to do it. And these are the guys that are saying, well, we want the securitization to be easy to access. They want the aircraft in an SPC, a special purpose company, and they appoint a security agent to manage it, which is Deutsche Bank. So that securitization structure only applies to purchase for the 80% loan. With a rental, there's no loan, it's just a rental. We sign a rental agreement for 12 years. We pay the rental every month. So although it's called an operating lease, it's a rental. The other is a purchase, and we repay a loan every month.
I think the other point also is that Fiji, a few years ago, we ratified various conventions, I think from memory,
The
the
Cape Town
Convention. So the Cape Town Convention, by Fiji being a signatory to the Cape Town Convention, also gives additional security to those companies, financiers that deal with Fiji Airways in respect of their ability to access those aircraft in the event where they need to, for example, come in, seize the aircraft because Fiji Airways, has not done the repayment. So, for example, if there's a lease aircraft here, sitting here, and Fiji Airways then, assuming that the hypothetical situation does not do the repayment, then they'll have to physically come and take the aircraft away. In the same way you go to a bank. The bank has a mortgage of your property, you buy a house. So when you don't do the repayments, they give you enough notice, etc., you go through the process, then they come and do a mortgagee sale. But the house is fixed, it's in the ground. An aircraft is not. And in the past, many, many decades ago, I think some airlines use their governments to kind of try and hide the aircraft or not adhere to their part of the deal. So Fiji actually ratified the convention to give them that additional confidence in dealing with Fiji Airways and ensuring that anybody that deals with Fiji or aircraft or airline companies from Fiji, they'll have that level of security too.
If I can add, what happens is that a Cape Town register in Ireland and all the mortgages are registered there. So the bank, in the case of Wakavuka, have the registration in Ireland. Now the aircraft sitting here, but they have access through the Cape Town Convention because the country has accepted the Cape Town Convention and the laws were actually changed to recognize it. But here's the big thing for us. Because of that, the interest rate's lower.
Yes.
And because of the export guarantee, the interest rate's lower. That's why that structure was put in place when we acquired the 330s as part of a restructure of the company to get the cheapest deal. Chairman and I always talk about and say, those 330s are the cheapest aircraft in the world. That was an amazing deal. And so Wakavuka was a huge thing in putting that together for us. Big positive.
AG, Chairman, Stanley Simpson, My TV. I think that's a very comprehensive briefing you've given. One of the most comprehensive briefings I've ever got from Fiji Airways. And I think quite a lot to chew through. And I'll touch the economics. But first I want to come to the politics because I think that's the issue where it is at right now. And opposition leaders calling on parliamentary inquiry, liquidation, because of the liquidation of the company. There's been a lot of muddying of the waters, which has been damaging to the image of Fiji Airways. Is it because there is lack of awareness, lack of understanding, and given that we are all in this together, has there been a briefing, or will there be a briefing for the political leaders to get them to understand where Fiji Airways is?
Stanley, and also to refer to what Fiji Times reporter said, we have repeatedly provided information in Parliament. In fact, I had an entire ministerial statement on Wanga Vuka. Some of the media organizations did not run it. You chose not to run it. This information has been available in the public space at the parliamentary level. But people have chosen not to run with it, or have chosen to be ignorant about it. And I think with all these issues coming up now, I think people are looking for political mileage. I find it actually quite disconcerting, in fact quite disturbing, that here you have, if you look at the rest of the world, politicians throughout the world, in many countries, of course not all of them, have rallied behind not necessarily political parties, but governments to ensure the security and sustainability of their countries. If Fiji Airways, for example, was not a significant player in the Fijian economy, you can then sort of maybe half expect it to happen. The fact that it is a major player in the economic life of Fiji, and they're deliberately making these kind of comments, goes to show that they're simply playing politics. You have this statement here, which you referred to, the Honorable Tusawa, saying the airline is facing liquidation. You said liquidation too. Where in the past number of months has there been any evidence of Fiji Airways being in liquidation? He talks about bankruptcy. Where has there been any evidence of Fiji Airways facing bankruptcy? Is there any of the creditors come along to Fiji Airways, put up winding up notices? You see, the issue here is this. Unfortunately, statements like this are simply just churned out without any sort of intellectual input by the media organizations themselves. They could go and do some investigation, but it's not being done. So it's been highly politicized, and I don't think there's been lack of information. The reality of the matter is that it's not a very complicated matter. The reality of the matter is that you can go and do a Google search, and you can even tell them, somebody said, oh, thank you for clarifying this. You can find all that information online. The annual reports of Fiji Airways is available at the company's office every year. So will this one be available?
So the debate is happening in the public, but have you brought them into a room and briefed them?
Parliament is the room we brief people regarding these matters. They raise it in Parliament. This gentleman now is saying he wants a parliamentary inquiry, releasing a press statement. If he wants a parliamentary inquiry, he should be raised on the floor of Parliament. Now, to have a member of Parliament make these sort of claims, I mean, if I were Fiji Airways, I would put this gentleman on notice. That alleging that Fiji Airways is into liquidation or bankruptcy. How irresponsible is that? There would be other stakeholders of Fiji Airways that have daily dealing with Fiji Airways. We put out a statement like that, they must be wondering what is happening here. That's why it's so irresponsible. It's like me saying my TV cannot pay its bills, or Fiji Times can't pay its bills, making those kind of blatant statements, or Fiji TV or FBC, whoever else, Fiji Sun, whoever is here, they'll be highly responsible for me to say that. So why is Fiji Airways fair game? That's the point I'm making. The fact of the matter is, Stanley, it's not out. A lot of misinformation being put out, not just with Fiji Airways, but many other things.
Well, I would argue Fiji Airways is, we're going to go back and forth like we always do, but
no,
it's a public company. We've put up 445 million. I just feel that...
What's the definition of public companies then? I don't want to get into chat shows. Let's focus on this and ask those questions.
Okay, so because we put up 445 million, that's quite a significant amount.
It's a guarantee, we've not put up. It's a guarantee.
Guaranteed amount. So you can understand there's concern amongst representatives of the people about what this means and what I mean, they don't know what they don't know. We don't know what we don't know. I think this kind of briefing, I think this explains it in way much better to someone about what is actually taking place at Fiji Airways. I just don't see that it's happened yet.
There used to be at one point in time guarantees given to FEA about $400 million. It did not generate government guarantee. It did not generate this kind of, shenanigans that we're seeing, no concern by the media. We had government guarantees for other types of projects. When you had the Exim Bank of India funding the FSC grant, the project that was given under the whatever government there was, SDL, did not see this kind of concern. So my point being, again, I think it's being put out of context. And when we give government guarantees, if you were listening to the parliamentary session, it is a requirement under the law that when we give a government guarantee, we have to, as government, state the reasons why, give all the information, state where are the loans being guaranteed, from whom will the monies be borrowed from, and who will be guaranteed. That was all given in Parliament again. So that information is also out.
So can I just make a comment on that? You know, I've worked with all these financiers, and I've been working with them for years. They never rely purely on a guarantee. The last thing any financier wants to do is exercise a guarantee. Their first starting point is, can you make the payments? So they took all our cash flows, independently validated them, did their due diligences and said, we know Fiji Airways can pay back. But having the guarantee in these circumstances is the extra comfort they needed. And I think it's an important point. You know, we haven't gone and got these guarantees and then they're all going to default and come running to government. And that's not how it works. So no financier just gives you money on a guarantee. They give it because they know the airline, they've seen the history, they know we punch above our weights, they know we've got a team that is working hard on survival and thriving, and they've seen all the cash flows. And they've been independently validated, and they know that there's a government standing behind us that believes in this airline and sees the strategic economic value. And the last thing they want to do is exercise a guarantee or come and try and recover against a guarantee. And that's the part I find hard to understand. That's how banking works. That's how financing works.
I mean, actually, it's a very valid point. And the same thing with ADB. ADB is not going to lend $50 million just because we've given a guarantee. They engaged P&D Paribas to actually carry out this, the due diligence. And Andre is absolutely right. Banks don't lend just for the borrower to default. Banks want to lend because they want to make money from you. It's a pain for them to go through the process of trying to go and recoup the security, etc. So it's more expensive for them. And can you imagine if, for example, you have certain assets now, the ability for others to go and purchase that asset is very minimal. Because nobody, in the same way, like you're going to say, I'm selling a hotel now, who's going to buy it? In the same way with Boeing and Airbus, I don't think they've got any orders at this point in time. So the point being that these financiers have actually done their due diligence. The added comfort for them is that government is given guaranteed, and also, as Andre has shown, when you have these kind of measures put in place, it also affects the the interest rates, etc. in the long term too.
So let us ask some economic questions. Qantas, what are we going to do about Qantas?
What do you mean, what are you going to do?
I mean, is there any lobbying with the Australian government? They're a shareholder. What is their? We've given up the guarantee. What are we asking them to do? They're also a shareholder.
How much time do you have? We can talk to you about 2 hours.
That's why I asked for a one-on-one review.
But the Qantas is not owned by the Australian government.
Yeah.
So
they must have influence.
but it's not owned by them. So you know, Qantas obviously has its own board or its own management team, and they make these decisions. I mean, like from our perspective, and Andre may want to make some comments regarding that as an operator, but certainly from a shareholder perspective, you're absolutely right. We are the only shareholder that has actually stepped forward. In other organizations, when you have you know, more than one shareholder, everybody kind of puts their bid in. Qantas has not. Qantas, as we said, in 2019 started flying directly in competition with Fiji Airways. It is, one may call, a very I was going to say unholy partnership. Nothing unholy about it, but the fact is it's not a very ideal situation. And they, of course, are free to attend the board meetings. They have not been attending the board meetings. The reality of the matter is that we believe as shareholders that we'd like to have some good strategic partners in Fiji Airways.
In my first months here, excited as I was to see 46% Qantas shareholding, I thought, wow, how much can I get out of them? I went off to Sydney, I met Mr. Alan Joyce, and I came back very disappointed. It was zero. And it's been zero ever since, and it's still zero today. And I think it's a sign of massive commitment that our government, even only being 51, sees the strategic value, and is bending over backwards to help this airline to survive and thrive. And the fact that Qantas are doing nothing, at some point there will have to be some way it's addressed. But I can tell you, when the announcement came they're going to fly here, Chairman and I went and met Alan Joyce, and we said, now what? You know, firstly you've given us zero, but now you've become our largest competitor. And we've got a whole story about how they're doing this to protect us against Virgin. Well, you can work that out for yourself. And so yes, it is a question, and we do have some ideas, but I think it's premature now. Our immediate situation is, let's finish our loans. ADB is the last loan we're working on. ADB have got a huge level of due diligence. We're progressing well, and once that's completed, we can look at other things. But you know, I was saying to someone the other day, we've cut our team in half, and we're working very hard. And we're doing everything we can to maximize what we're doing and getting the best we can.
No banks come running, and you've had to go to your shareholders. Of course, our government has been there helping, and the absence of Qantas, like you mentioned. Attorney General and Minister for Economy, do we have enough room? Does our government have enough room to continue to bail out Fiji Airways?
Well, you know, normally the term bailout is used when somebody's in dire straits and they're about to collapse, and then you come running with a bag full of money and you bail them out. We're not doing that. Like the CEO highlighted, the government of New Zealand gave in excess of $900 million to Air New Zealand. They gave it to them as a grant. We have not forked out any taxpayers' money. The example I used about EFL, when EFL had about a $300 to $400 million government guarantee, the Fijian government never had to fork out any money of taxpayers' money, because EFL did do its repayments. And now that government guarantee exposure has been reduced even further. Some entities, we have a $8 million exposure, $15 million exposure, whatever the case may be. But we have not forked it out because those entities continue to do the repayments. So we believe that what we have done with Fiji Airways is actually a astute way of being able to ensure that Fiji Airways stays afloat, meets its obligations, continues to do the work to be ready when we are ready to travel. Because we don't want Fiji Airways to be sitting around twiddling its thumb, and then if, for example, the Bulla bubble starts or a vaccine is developed, you know, there may be still health protocols to follow. Because the way we travel now is going to change significantly. So they are already doing that work, and they need the finance to do that work. They're preparing themselves. Their pilots are still being trained. So we don't want a situation where our pilots' certification has been lost And then when we're ready to fly, then we don't have any pilots with any, qualifications or certification. So all that work is being done behind the scenes. So we don't believe it's a bailout as such, but it's an astute way of ensuring that Fiji Airways has access to finance. And we will. We'll continue to ensure that Fiji Airways will remain as a viable enterprise. The reality of the matter is that 40% of our economy is dependent on tourism. Of our GDP is dependent on tourism. There are obviously many ancillary services that also feed off the tourism sector. The example I've been using, the lady who may be selling mithai outside here, she's not doing any business because hardly anybody here. Nobody should work here. If Fiji Airways should shut down, all of these people, even the 700 people are currently working, they won't be employed. The lady who sells boiled Eevee won't be able to sell her boiled Eevee because there won't be anybody here. Or the hotels will be then at the mercy of foreign airlines. Should there be a small storm or cyclone, they'll decide to, well, let's not fly to Fiji. That'll be their choice. If they want to jack up the price, should there be only one airline flying, they'll do that. So when you are an island nation state, and when you are a dependency on tourism, and I'm not saying that should be the only sector we should be dependent on. We're trying to diversify our economy, we've been doing that. And if you look at the statistics, our dependency on only one or two sectors has been reducing over a period of time. But it is still a major component of our economy. So you need to look at the entire what we call supply chain. If you go to some of the countries in the Caribbean, none of them actually have a national carrier. So most of the hotels are foreign owned. So what happens when the tourist spends the money in some of the West Indian countries, 90%, 95%, 99% goes back out of the country because all those entities that provide the services, they're all foreign owned. This is Fijian owned.
Just a final few questions, if I may just have one. We have 3 Suba newsrooms on the Zoom session. Andre,
Well, $1 billion revenue would not have happened if we didn't expand our network and bring more tourists to the country. We added Singapore and Japan and San Francisco 3 times a week. How that's to way more doesn't make sense. We need a fleet of 6 aircraft. The 2 Etihad aircraft are temporary, that makes 8. We had 4, we went to 6. We would never have achieved $1 billion turnover without that. And when we were making the $1 billion turnover, there was no question whether then we had expanded too much. And we know that we set a target of an 8% growth a year. We've achieved, and I've got the stats here, I'll give it to you year on year, our growth in passengers. Let me just quickly read it to you. Thought I had it. I've got 5 years growth here. I'll just read it to you quickly. Our passengers went up 7% in 2015, 5% 2016, 11% 2017, 7% in 18, and this year would have been 11 without Qantas. With Qantas it's 2%. Now we had a growth target of 8% a year. When we talk 8%, it's actually 4% in arrivals, because we count a passenger both ways. Inbound and outbound is 2 passengers. When you talk of country arrivals, it's half of that. If you take the growth target set by Tourism Fiji, 5% a year, we were 4% of that 5%. That's not excessive growth. That's realistic, normal, good business. A business that doesn't grow is a dying business. And our costs keep going up every year by more than airfares. Costs go up 4, 3, 5%. Airfares don't grow at the same level. I've got airfares here. They grow minimalistic compared to that. So where do we get the ability to generate profits? Is by growing, by adding more volume. The country needs the volume for the hotels. And when we say an 11% growth, in arrivals it's half of that. Fiji Airways counts both ways, 2 passengers. So that we've had realistic growth targets, but a target every year to grow. And every year we review our business model. We bring in experts with the tools to do it, special forecasting tools. They got databases of everything around the world of how the traffic moves. With these APG dot models give us accurate information. They what-if models. We use matrices on it to see if we use quality of service index, can we improve? So whatever we do is very well considered and well thought through. The fact that COVID's come along, no airline could have planned for. So when we were generating $1 billion, there were no questions. Now all of a sudden we have too much. We've got 2 aircraft that are temporary that should have gone back, and they will go back. But we haven't got too much.
When you also increase frequency of flights,
Yeah.
it creates more jobs.
Exactly.
Nobody questioned that when they had to go out and recruit more crew, more pilots. So it creates jobs.
We've grown crew, and in the last 3 years from 240 to 450, we doubled crew.
CEO, can you know about the loan with the FNPF? Because we saw the FNPF CEO mention yesterday that.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a mistake by the CEO of FNPF. We happily phoned this morning and said thank you. And he said, it was a mistake.
So you're saying that you did not apply for a moratorium?
No. And not at all.
So when he...
I understand he's going to issue a statement today correcting himself.
Okay, but you did take a loan from...
No, so let me explain
FNPF.
what happened with FNPF. We have several loans. We have on our Twin Otter, our ADR, and then we've got this new loan of 53 million, which was going to be the financing of our academy, but instead they chose to not go that route, and they've taken a government guarantee as the security. The old loans, they approached us and said all their loans, they have given the people a payment deferral of principal, but you pay interest. Because when you get a deferral, you don't want to defer interest, otherwise you're going to pay interest on interest. You normally get the principal deferred. So the capital portion of the payment and the interest you pay. They've approached us on our old loans months back, and they've offered all their loans, whoever they are, a principal deferment till December, and you only pay interest. This new loan, when we took it out, they said no deferrals. And we said, fine, we understand, it's a new loan, and they've also got less cash today. So when we read this in the paper, we said, wow, Father Christmas has come early. We phoned and said, thank you. And they said, no, sorry, there was a misunderstanding.
What a big misunderstanding. Going back to the bidding process between Airbus and Boeing, which is quite a fascinating story. And obviously you're taking both prices to both sides. Usually you have a preference.
No.
No?
So what we do is when we did this...
You don't like you prefer a Boeing plane
No.
and you play them off
When we
against each
did
other?
the 350 campaign, why it took 2 years, is Boeing came along and said, we want you to have an all-Boeing fleet. Get rid of these Airbuses. You need to get rid of the 330s that you've got. The 3 are owned, 1 on lease, 4. The 2 Etihad ones go back. We will give you 6 787-9s and new Dreamliners. We'll help you to get rid of the spares, in other words, the losses. We'll help train the people. We'll do everything we can. Let's come and show you we can do the job for you. So we said, thank you very much. They gave us an offer. Airbus came along and said, whoa, we've got a new aircraft called the 330-900 Neo coming out. It's not new generation, only saves 15% fuel. Same aircraft, but it's got bigger engine, more capacity, and it's way cheaper. We can replace everything with Neos, and then you can grow. So the beauty of the Airbus is you can grow to bigger size aircrafts. So it's an escalating type product as opposed to the Dreamliner. If you go to the next level, it's too big, which would be the 777. So what happened is the campaign was huge. And why we use an independent parties not to have the bias is they take the offer, they analyze the impact on the P&L, the impact on the cash. They take all the pieces together, and when we do the campaign, as we get the offers, we go back to both parties with the same requests. So we would get the initial offer, we request improvement, same improvement, and each one like that. So we follow a very rigid, transparent process which an independent party watches. And in the end, that party gives us a statement in writing to say this was a fair process, transparent, and here's the better numbers for the deal. Of course, we then take that to management, come with a final proposal to the board, because they purely are advisors. And I can tell you, we went through the possibility of getting all Dreamliners, or escalating to 2-350s, or getting Neos, and in the end, using that amazing deal we got in the 330s, because I can tell you, they cost us half the price of a rental aircraft, half, the 2 330s. Because we got one 330
from Etihad.
Etihad.
Yeah, half the price. So we've got 6 330s and the 2 Etihad. 3 are owned, and then the others are leased. 2 are Etihad. So the one that's leased from Avalon is here till 2027. That costs the same a month as our 350s. The 3 that are owned are half the price because of that deal that was put together with the financing structure and everything. Amazing deal. Now you can't just give that up and go and get Dreamliners. There's a huge cost to that.
But you also, the Maxes maybe can get it. So.
Yes, so now the Maxes. The Maxes are, we're flying 20-year-old 737s. A lot of technical disruptions. Engines are expensive because every time you overhaul an engine, the price goes up. We're paying maintenance costs on those 737s that are huge. And you cannot fly an aircraft beyond 20 years. It starts becoming very uneconomical. So we did the same campaign. Went into the market, looking at the Airbus A320 and A321 Neos versus the Max. The Max is a 737. We had them competing all the way through, looking at the offers, looking at all the factors. At the time, the 320 Neo with a Pratt & Whitney engine had problems. The Maxes weren't flying yet. And there was no question that the engine hour rate we got for the Max is way better than the 320. The lease rental we got way better. The financing deal way better. It was a fantastic choice. The fact that it's got an MCAS piece of software that causes a hassle, well, who would ever have known that? But we still believe it's a phenomenal aircraft. And here's the positive. When it now flies, it will be the safest in the world. You've had every regulator around the world do their maximum to check and recheck and dig, and it will be a very good aircraft.
Plus, a few simulators.
Yes. So now what happened was, because we believed that the Max had sufficient changes that you should simulate a train, only ourselves and one other airline, which is Fly Dubai, trained all our pilots for the Max on the simulator. All the other airlines did a computer-based iPad-type conversion. We didn't. We did 2 sessions in the simulator. That's why when they were grounded, we said, whoa, our guys can handle this plane. And here's the positive. When we took signed the order, Southwest Airlines had flown 45,000 flights since November 17 on that plane with no problems. And that gave us the comfort. Big operator, they got the biggest order in the world, very safe aircraft. And then this happened. But we haven't lost money. We've been compensated. But not easily. It was a big fight. Chairman and I met them many times. We even flew to Singapore to meet their CEO. But in the end, we got the best settlement in the world.
But you got on the few simulators.
Then what happened was, we decided to put pressure on Boeing, and they gave us some money, contributed towards the simulator, and we've put in the Max simulator. There are only 12 around in the world. The requirement going forward for the Maxes is compulsory simulator training. We're going to have a queue all the way from here around the world waiting for training. But we were smart with our MAX simulator. It's a 737 and a MAX. We use it for both. So that's why you'll see in our media we call it a 737 family simulator, because it can do both.
And you know, we had contributed $1 million seed funding towards the Aviation Academy, because the government's thinking was that, you know, we need to be strategic in these sorts of things. As the CEO highlighted earlier on, we were sending all our pilots offshore for the simulator course. They go to Singapore, they have to wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning, but that's the time slot they'll get to go into the simulation course. Spend $400 or $500 a night at the hotel that they have to pay for, sometimes 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks at least. So the fact is now it's here, and we'll get business from offshore coming for this Aviation Academy.
So conversion of a first officer to a captain is 12 simulator sessions. You're going to send them to go do those sessions and pay for it. I mean, these are massive complexities that you walk up the road and our guys are doing their conversions. So this is the problem that we had. You won't find other airlines our size with an academy, because there's a notion that unless you have 10 of a type, you shouldn't be building a simulator. We did the homework. We brought in Skyworks. We did proper business analyses and plans, and we've shown that in 3 years we can pay this back in the monies we're going to save, and we didn't work on big levels of third-party work, limited levels. And we approached the AG and said, here's an idea, we need to do all the research, and we got the seeding money, the $1 million to go and do all the homework and research, which without it we wouldn't have done. So again, we're grateful for government, because there's no question without their support and encouragement we wouldn't have a world-class academy. Those simulators we have are the most advanced in the world. It's a phenomenal operation, that.
I think you need to take maybe Stanley on a tour of that.
Yes.
But he explains it better than you,
Yeah. But the simulator. The simulator.
Maybe final
That's
two.
why I should do the work.
No, so just on the academy, there are two parts. The one part is the simulators, where you're training pilots to be recurrent and also to do upgrades. The other part of the academy is where we got the fixed devices, the fixed simulators, and training rooms, and we're going to do ab initio developments. In other words, cadets. Take them from school and take them all the way through.
Also for the crew.
Yes, and then we've got our cabin crew. So we've got 3 simulator bays. One bay was empty, because it was either going to be a Neo or a 787 or something, or a 350. So until we get a 350 simulator, we've put the 350 slide in, which we use for all the crew training now. So they no longer have to go overseas for that slide operation. And Shanaz is going to be responsible for the service training in full now. We've given all the training to Shanaz. We're putting our whole training there. And we're going to do every bit of training in the company, in the academy. We've got the classrooms, and we're also getting the training unit to do the service training that will be acquired. We'd ordered it, but we put it on hold with COVID-19. We'll do it after COVID-19 ends.
So you talked about returning to plan on reducing costs.
Well, the same way we did the 40 million. I beat the table every morning. The guys listen. We've got teams working on it. So I've appointed a dedicated team who we're taking every contract. So we have a list of every contract we're renegotiating. We're looking at every cost again. And the idea is to just keep the program we've been running for the last 3 years. We're just going to heighten now and do even more.
Minister, I believe that you mentioned in your statement former employees and of course current employees of Fiji Airways get $1,000, and CEO, you mentioned you're re-looking at contracts. Now, of course, when the announcement came of the laying off of 700 employees, there was, I think, a question put in Parliament about why wasn't there a press conference to have the Minister and Chairman, of course, making the announcement instead of employees receiving the notification by emails. My question is this the last we will see of some sort of assistance from Fiji Airways to former employees, and will former employees get the first chance when you are travel ready?
I think if I could answer the part about the minister, I mean, it's an employer-employee issue. We've never had a press conference regarding employer-employee issues. We only have, as shareholder, when profits have been declared, we've obviously then come and talked about the profit sharing. But we've never participated in any employer-employee issues, pre-COVID, post-COVID, etc. And we won't. That's not our job. Obviously, as you know, the matter is before the courts. So, it may be some judiciary for you to be able to talk about that, and maybe that's where you should, leave it and wait for the outcome of the tribunal. But most certainly in respect of the, day-to-day operations of Fiji, we don't participate in that.
Under the New Zealand and Australia, what does this mean for Fiji Airways?
Well, first thing is you'll notice that the announcement that the AG made on the recovery package, the 150,000 passengers and the stipend, it doesn't refer to Bula Bubble. It says the first 150,000 people coming on a holiday package, here's the 60 million, which is a 400 travel stipend to be put towards the cost of the package. So there's flexibility. And obviously we sit here every day and we say, well, the Bula Bubble is the ideal way to start. We're going to go to maximize the number of people. We're targeting 150,000 people. We've got support to do it. But if it never opens and other markets open and border restrictions lift, we're ready to move this in. Our travel ready program and our commercial ready can be shifted to any market. However, it's not Fiji Airways that makes that call. It's, as the AG kindly has said, it's government's call. Governments will decide when the market's open.
Last question from Charles.
The package that's talking about getting people here, and you mentioned it's the best package, and you're trying to beat other countries and tourism places around the world to bring more people here. For Fiji Airways alone, does that mean that your ticket prices will also drop to get a good price? And will that mean sacrificing some kind of Fiji Airways finance, or have you got the price to go to put your head above the water?
So the $400 is split $170 to Fiji Airways and $230 to the hotel, right, per passenger. We've also very grateful for the $100 reduction in departure tax. When you take the $170 and $100 in departure tax, that's more than a 50%. It's actually a 55% reduction in the ticket price. So we're adding $30 to that, and we're going to end up with amazing prices that you've never seen before. And we believe that with volume, we can offset the impact of the contribution we're making towards the price. So yes, you're going to see unbelievable prices, both from the hotels and from Fiji Airways. And this travel stipend is a huge, I would call it lifesaver, and an advantage to get these amazing packages out there.
I recall reading somewhere in the past few weeks, some public person, figure, made a comment and saying, why are they wasting money giving $400 for tourists to come to Fiji? Obviously, whoever is that made the statement has no understanding of economics. If we get tourists coming through our borders, what does it do? It helps those workers who are currently not working in the hotels come back to work. It gives them a sense of dignity, self-worth. They have money in their pockets. They themselves then go out and spend that money, and it generates more economic activity. So they say we should not give this $400, and we simply should just give out more unemployment benefit or the equivalent of. But that does not generate economic activity. The example that I gave, the hotel workers, for example, if you've got, Denrau or resorts along Coral Coast, when those hotel workers, when they come out of their hotels at the end of the day, after they finish the day's work, They go and spend money. There are people who live off their earnings. So they obviously don't even understand it. So the way we looked at it is a holistic approach, is to create the robustness within the economy. Yes, there's a lot of uncertainty. The CFL person asked, what will happen if this happens? Sherry, and you asked, for 23, 24. Well, actually, we don't know what will happen. But as ADB has done the due diligence, as Fiji Airways has done, obviously we as government had to be satisfied with their cash flow projections. And we believe that there is enough room there for Fiji Airways to continue with the funding that they've requested a guarantee over. And they'll carry them over a period of time. But that's we need to understand that. A lot of these comments being made by these individuals, they're simply looking at it from a very narrow perspective as opposed to looking at it holistically. And any proper analysis needs to look at the whole picture.